part of the vision that the owners had when they were starting to think about putting together this project. Part of that vision also included a generic, but at the same time, sort of technical identity, which was wanting to be a team that's protagonist in the field, that plays daring football, that plays attacking football.
The general manager of NWSL's 15th expansion club in Boston, Massachusetts. It's Domènec Guasch. Domè, welcome into Attacking Third.
Thank you, Elisa. Thank you, Sandra, for having me here.
We are so excited to chat with you ahead of Boston officially joining the league and everything. But before we even get to that, NWSL 2025 has kicked off. Week 1 is in the books. So we got to take a look at all 14 teams in action across 7 matches across the opening weekend. And we got some good games that we took in. What did you like from the opening NWSL weekend? Teams, players, styles? What stood out to you from NWSL week 1?
Well, honestly, let me say I couldn't wait for it to start. I arrived in the U.S. in December, so the league was over at that time, and I like all the time that I've been here, so I haven't had the chance to actually follow it. So I couldn't wait for that. I was able. I think I watched about 3 full games, and then a couple others. I watched a few minutes. But yeah, the competitiveness, right? It's always there. At the same time, obviously, I think the first one I watched was the Orlando Chicago, which Orlando continue in that path that they showed last year. But yeah, I am expecting that they'll be still powerful, and Kansas showed that as well. Washington showed that as well. I'm sure that other teams are looking good and will continue to improve and will challenge those teams that were perhaps a little bit more powerful last year.
Now, Domè, I don't know if you know this, but Sandra's based in Chicago. And so the fact that you started with wow, Orlando just crushed Chicago.
I twitched. I was like,
No,
rough.
Look, I was looking forward to that being more challenging, honestly, right?
You and me both, man. tough opener for sure. But I mean, great game for neutrals, honestly. Domè, you're as general manager, you have a lot of responsibilities, but a big one of those is that you're going to be tasked with putting together a team for Boston. So coming out of opening weekend, maybe how are some of the current teams in NWSL maybe shaping the way you want to build a team for Boston?
Yeah, I think obviously we've looked at other expansion teams in the past and currently, right? Because ultimately this is a continuous process of building and developing, even for clubs that have been established for many years, but especially for the ones that have been established for a shorter term. And yeah, I think I was talking about this with a good professional back in Europe. But it's not only about the roster that you build, right, and how you project that team will perform and play on the field, which is a very important job and probably one of the most important ones. But then also there's a next step of that actually being implemented, right, and how you build that and how you perform while building, right? Because we're in a league that it's so competitive. So it's not only about we have 3 years to build out, we don't need to worry about competition. No, we're coming in to perform from the very first moment while we're building, right? And in that regard, there have been different experiences from other clubs that we're trying to learn from, not only in terms of roster building, but then also in the next step that will be next year, right? So thankfully we don't have to worry that much just yet, and our focus is on the roster building. But at the same time, I know that we'll need to be adaptable and flexible in order to perform, because that's something that we want to do from day one.
Yeah, absolutely. What have there been conversations already about the style of football that you would like to see Boston play, or are those conversations that maybe you're looking to have deeper when the club makes coaching hires?
Yeah, no. So that I would say 100% that is something that it's not even said by me or by DGM or even the head coach or anyone else, but that was part of the vision that the owners had when they were starting to think about putting together this project. Part of that vision also included a generic, but at the same time, sort of technical identity, which was wanting to be a team that's protagonist in the field, that plays daring football, that plays attacking football, right? And again, it's very generic, but you can already tell, like, okay, that sort of sets a standard, sets a vision for what we want to build. And in that regard, I believe that's one of the reasons why they hired me, because I aligned with that vision and that identity, and I'm here to support them. And obviously, with that, that's what we're using to guide us in the search for head coach and other staff members, as well as players, right? But that's a vision that does not belong to a coach or to a GM, but to the club itself.
Domè, I imagine also the 13 plus years of experience at Barcelona helped them in hiring you too, right? It wasn't just that you aligned on the vision. You got pretty good experience too.
I got some experience at a pretty good club, definitely. But yeah, like, at the same time, they could not align with that vision, which obviously with those 13 and a half years, that identity, right, and that philosophy and that style, like it's second nature to me, right? It's part of who I am too. So I cannot even dissociate from that. So if that wasn't the case, I'm sure that I wouldn't be here.
And with having a style, having an identity that it sounds like Boston is pretty much confident in what they want to do, you get to build and help build a club from the ground up. And that includes technical staff, a head coach, but most importantly, a roster, which is the backbone and the foundation of a club. So can you describe the ideal characteristics of a player that you would want to build a club around?
Look, I would never build a club around one player. First of all, right? Because ultimately this is an 11v11 game, and we know that we'll need a competitive 25 or 26 player roster in order for us to perform at a high level. And obviously, with the vision that we have, and not only in terms of the identity, but with what I said earlier, right? We also want to perform. We have to be adaptable, we have to be flexible, and yeah, in certain we know that for sure we will not be able to implement the type of game that we want in every single game we want, especially in the beginning. And for that regard, we need many different type of players when we look at the technical side. Yes, of course, we want them to understand the game, we want them to be smart and skillful. And yeah, if they can be strong and fast, that's ideal, right? But that's sort of what everybody wants. And in that regard, what we need is obviously different players and different profiles in the different roles or positions on the field that can complement each other, that can help us achieve that collective game that we want. But if I would say, if there's one thing that has to be consistent across the entire roster, is a type of personality, right? And a type of personality that sees an expansion team, sees that this building process as a opportunity that's exciting, right? And that's not for everyone, right? Like, certain players will look for safer positions to be in, right? In teams that are established, that have been around, where there's certain dynamics, where the culture has been built. But we're not that type of club right now, right? We're a club that has to build from zero, that not only has to build from a technical identity, but has to build also a strong culture that can support the success in the future, and can actually get us closer to that success. And for that, we need certain type of mentality, right? Like, certain players that come here with that mindset of building, of being part of the build up, wanting to be proactive in the culture build, and being aligned with the vision and the values that the club have. Because they're as important as the coach or any staff members or ownership or anyone else in this process of building the culture.
I totally understand that, right? You need good mindset, you need good buy-in from players, good personalities, right? Because that's who you're meshing with. But Domè, early signings, is it going to be more of a defensive player, more of an attacking player? Give us something.
Well, look, we're scouting the market. We have the ability to bring players early, so so obviously there is a lot that we're looking into. We've sort of already like put together the type of profiles that we like, and then with that we've put different names to each profile that we like. But on one hand, we have, I would say, a pretty complex job because there's no expansion draft anymore. There's no college draft anymore. So, sort of, hey, like already the job of filtering that down, like filtering sort of the entire world down to the players that we're interested in and the ones that can actually be realistic for us. Obviously, that is already a very big job to do, and that's where we're in. And in that regard, like I would say, like there's no priority in the sense that hey, we want to bring in first a defender and then a midfield and then a striker or anything like that. It's basically looking at what players we want, what's the situation, right? And there are players that are in Europe right now that might be becoming free agents in the summer. So those are ones that we can actually start talking to and are in conversation with. And that does not relate to a position or anything, but ultimately availability of the players, right? While we're scouting the more of the national talent for towards the end of the year, and those conversations are going to start in the second half of the year, especially for the ones that become free agents, and to the ones that don't, then obviously we'll have to wait until clubs are open for those conversations. So in that regard, it's about studying the market, doing the research, being obviously following the different situations closely to take advantage of the different situation that the market presents, more than saying, hey, we want this first, then this, then that, because if we have that approach, we'll probably miss a lot of the opportunities, and we don't want to do that.
I love that. I love that Lisa had to ask, and I thought you handled the question pretty well. But because there's no real blueprint, right? We've seen the league go through double expansion a couple times already, and we saw San Diego Wave go more defensive and bring on defensive players when they signed Dahlkemper or Brock Yerma, and Angel City with their first player signing, and Christian Press, Bay FC with Alex Loera. So it's different, it's just different whenever they have announced those first ever player signing. So I know everyone's eager to see and hear who it's going to be for Boston. When you came into this role, you touched on it a little bit that you joined in and after the league was over. I remember the introductory video with you. It was snowing in Boston. You're in White Stadium. When you decide to take on massive roles like this, one that come with a huge title like general manager in a new league that maybe you're not familiar with, you have to maybe reach out to friends or family for advice, right? So I'm curious if you were able to chat a little bit with Jonatan Giráldez, compañero, you spent time together in Barcelona. What sort of advice, if any, did he give you? And do you have to still pay for tickets if you got to go see a Spirit game, or how does that work?
Well, I hope he'll have with those tickets. I still have not done it, so we'll have to see, and I'll get back to you on that later on. But yeah, I would say like it was not only him. Thankfully, there's a bunch of people I could say that I've crossed paths while I was at Barcelona. Yeah, obviously with Jonatan and a couple others of his staff members, we were working closely, and perhaps we're closer. But I can say I spoke to a lot of people around the league, and that was not only a conversation that I had related to this specific role, but yeah, like through time and relationships that you develop, especially obviously being at Barcelona, I think was in a privileged position because a lot of clubs would come to us to see how we were doing things, and obviously that allowed me to get to know a lot of people, right? And also at the same time get to know about their experiences, their knowledge, and those obviously were very helpful to me on one sense when I was already, hey, thinking about one day leaving Barcelona. I knew the NWSL was gonna be probably the next step, right? Without nothing concrete. But then Boston came up, and on one hand, it was a city that, from a personal perspective and for my family, made sense. On the other hand, it was a new project starting from scratch, and I see that as very exciting and unique because in the professional world, you don't get that many chances like this many times, right? Where you're starting a club at the top level already. And yeah, and then the alignment with the owner's vision. I think all of that combined, obviously, with the experiences that Jonatan has been having here, but then also many other people have had in this league. It was very encouraging for me, and actually made the decision very easy for me to leave Barcelona and embark on this new journey.
A heck of a journey that you've gotten yourself into, but it does sound like you're ready for that next step and taking on such a big project that is an expansion team in a competitive league like the NWSL. And if anything's more competitive than the football on the pitch in the NWSL, it is the fans and their passion for their clubs. And across all sports, we've seen name changes or things that happen. Even if you look as closely as the NWSL, it happened just a few years ago in Louisville, Kentucky. They initially announced Proof Louisville, and then after some feedback from fans and supporters, they decided they were going to go with Racing Louisville. We're now seeing that also happening in Boston. I mean, this whole interview, we were just referring to it as NWSL's Boston Club. We don't have a name, but what's the current status of Boston's rename for the club?
Look, honestly, I'm actually very thankful that that's not part of my duties because, and you mentioned earlier, right? Like, hey, yeah, I might seem ready on in terms of the sporting side, but I would definitely not be ready for to lead that side. So yeah, I'm very thankful. At the same time, I've seen, like, since I got here, because obviously I got here, the name have been rebuilt, and the club were already in this process of hey, like, listening to fans and serving and like evaluating, right, like how everything played out and how to address it. And look, I think it taught the entire organization, and that applies to me as well, right? A great lesson, because it is something that at Barcelona we had it very clear. It's a club that's been established for many years, belongs to members, but we're starting here, and I would say it's no different, right? Like, the same way that when I worked at Barcelona, I worked not for the president, I didn't work for my bosses, I worked for the fans, right? It's the same way here, the same exact way. Yeah, the ownership might be different, the league might be different, the culture and the country is different, but that doesn't change, right? We all here are here for the fans. They're the driver of all everything that we do, of all this business and all this industry. So yeah, that's obviously, they're the bosses here, and in that regard, we got to make sure that they're not only involved, but at the same time, how can we make them happy? Because ultimately, that's our vision, right? Like, make our fans happy, engage them, have them identify with the club, and that goes obviously from the name all the way to the players and the staff members that we have, and involve every single area in the club. And that's what I take from that, right? Like, while I'm not directly involved with the name change, at the same time, yeah, it's a process and a lesson that applies to the entire organization.
On fans and local support, how have they helped at all in terms of giving tips for adjusting to life in Boston? you've been there since December, you mentioned, and now there's going to maybe be about 11 months to the launch of next season. How has it been adapting to just life in an American city like Boston for you?
Yeah, no, I have to say that the city and like fans and people in general have been very welcoming. So in that regard, I'm very thankful, and my family is very thankful for that. I have to say that at the same time, I'm very thankful of having been so busy, because then sort of now the weather got nicer, but it was not like that when I arrived. And the fact that I stayed busy and inside, it actually helped me get through this tougher weather time. But yeah, other than that, I'd say like my son now, who was like my at the personal level, that was my main concern, right? Like, hey, how is he going to adapt to the new life in Boston? And no, he's been in school for over a month now. He loves it. He goes with a smile on his face every single morning, comes back every single afternoon with a smile on his face. And as a father, that's all I care about.
Does he
Oh,
like
so
the setup in the office? We heard it from a little birdie told us that sometimes he likes to leave you notes.
Yeah, oh yeah, then you got little birds here. Yeah, so he sometimes I have so in front of me there's a wall that I can actually paint on and write. So that's where I put my ideas on, and then sort of I try to digest them into the computer. And sometimes he does, when he comes in, he'll leave a little note, and yeah, those are not erased. So
Aw,
that's like, people already knows here we can erase everything else, but those
I love
notes
it.
stay in the wall.
I love
Oh
it.
gosh,
That's
that's
adorable.
adorable. Yeah, it's nice that he can also like come in around the office, and it sounds like he's having a good time with it, which is all you want for your kids, right? Is to have fun and enjoy it.
Yeah, actually, there's a funny story. The other next week, he has to wear, like, there's one day that he has to wear his favorite team jersey, and I asked him, because obviously if you ask him what team he supports, he'll say Barcelona normally. And I asked him like, "Hey, are you gonna wear Barcelona jersey?" At first, he said yes, and I remember going into my office at home, and then a couple of minutes later, he comes, says, "Dad, I'm actually gonna wear Boston's jersey." And like that was actually like, oh, like he gave me goosebumps. Like this kid, like he's smart. He's
Good
smart.
job. Good job.
Good job. Yeah,
It sounds like everybody's adjusting really well.
you've raised him well. You've raised him well. Domè, you've spent obviously time around the globe in and around the soccer. Your English is fabulous. But now you're in Boston, and Boston has its own dialect. How's your Boston accent coming along? Can you, for us here on Attacking Third, give us your breakfast order in your best Boston accent?
Honestly, I have to say, I, and thank you for the praise on the English, but yeah, I wouldn't say it's not that great yet, in the sense that it's hard for me to differentiate the Boston accent still from other accents. I think also because like I was back in Barcelona and then I got immersed right away here. So kind of I got used very quickly. There are still a few words that I still like, oh, like I hadn't heard that much in other places. So but yeah, I would say it would be very hard for me to make the accent, because I really don't differentiate it yet. Like I'm not that great with English yet.
I love it. Keep it
Okay,
real. That's
we'll give
great.
you a break on this one. Maybe after
Thank you.
Boston's first season,
Yeah,
we'll circle back on the Boston
All
accent.
right, let's do that.
100%.
Yeah,
Oh
but
my
I would
goodness.
say it has to be Dunkin'. That I know.
There you go. There
There
you
you go.
go.
Look,
He's
okay,
learning well.
what a great segue here. There's a lot to be excited for Boston. New faces, new names, players, a new team for the new roster, facilities that are on their way. And I think with some of that excitement, maybe we thought, okay, let's have a little fun and think into the future in this new stadium. If there's a certain type of like concession, a food or a drink that you would want to have for Boston fans to enjoy while they're watching the team?
A food or drink? Obviously, if it was food, and that's something that I definitely miss from back in Barcelona, right? So, yeah, why not a little tapas food truck or something like that. That would be
Nice.
probably my go-to at the stadium. And I know obviously that's not that American or Bostonian, but yeah, that would definitely be my go-to.
Yes, nice.
I would line up. I would eat
Yeah,
that during
same.
the game. That sounds great. That sounds great. Domè, thank you so much for chatting with us. This was awesome. We'll circle back on first player signing, how your Boston accent's developing, how your son's going. This was really fantastic, though. Thank you.
Thank you both for having me. I had a lot of fun. So yeah, looking forward to catching up sometime soon.